Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, I was wondering where everyone was.
We're here.
We hit traffic.
Okay, no problem. I was just about to text Jen and say, hey, did I miss the memo or what?
No. So we're going to give it a couple minutes while we wait for people to sign on. So in the meantime, we'll start with introductions and we'll do it popcorn style. So I'll start. My name is Jen and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm calling in from Studio City. And tonight, I really hope to finish my native B. And I will pass that on to Rochelle.
Hi, I'm Rochelle. I'm calling in from Marina Del Rey. And let's see, preferred pronouns, I'm open. She, her, I like G. Kind of like G, Jaja. I don't know, there's like a nice ring to that. But I've got an avocado and I am hoping to put some nice kind of fringy details and make it a little texturized tonight. And I'm going to pass it to Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee and I'm calling in from Altadena, California. And I've finished my native plants and I'm working on weird mosaic ornaments. And she, her pronouns, and I am passing it on to Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I go by she, her, and I'll be working on my butterfly tonight. And I will pass it on to Maria.
Thank you. I'm Maria. I'm in LA. I'm working on Mattia Poppy. Hope to finish it tonight. And she, her. That's it. And I'll pass it on to Emily.
Hi there, Emily in Echo Park, neighborhood of Los Angeles. She, her pronouns, glad to be with you all in Fires of the West. I'm just going to be reading and listening tonight. And let me go ahead and pass it on to Ansu.
Hi everyone, Ansu John. I'm calling in from Palms, West LA. I have made incremental progress on my B and would love your feedback actually. I go by she, her, and I've got this huge, I don't know if you can see it, this huge like area, which looks like it's all black, but I'm wondering if it should be striped or what, it's a B. So I'm going to go with filling in as much dark as possible and then seeing if I can fill in some light. We'll see. Let me pass it on to Olan.
Hi, I'm calling in from West Hollywood. I use she, her pronouns. I'm working on a very intricate, as it turns out, sunflower with butterfly and bee. And I got here a little bit late, so I'm not sure who's introduced themselves. Vicki, have you introduced yourself?
No, I'm Vicki and I'm in Santa Monica and it's she, her pronoun. And I just sent my avocado embroidery in. So I'm thinking I have something here. I'll get started with it soon. Have you gone Lindley Green?
No, hi, I'm Lindley. I'm calling in from Pasadena, she, her pronouns, and I'm continuing work on a white sage that I'm not too far along on. And I'll pass it to Sylvia.
Thank you. I'm Sylvia Holmes. I'm in Pasadena, California, she, her pronouns, and I'm mending because I don't have anything else. I don't think any embroidery. So these are busted. I'm going to try to put them together. Thank you. and I will pass it along to Nance Clem.
Hi, I'm Nancy, and I'm calling in from Chicago. And I'm not going to show you what I'm working on, but I am working on with a needle and thread, and it's between mending and embroidery at the same time. And I go by she, her, or they, them pronouns. And I'm not sure who hasn't spoken because I also came in late. So I pass it on to who might need to speak out and introduce themselves.
Well, I will.
Go ahead.
Hi. Oh, who's that? Oh,
You
hi,
go.
hi. Who's that so I can call on you next? Well, you go next. Hi, I'm Joan. I am mending tonight. And I am in North Hollywood, California. I go by she, her. I had finished a bee. It looks very much like the one Ansu did. And I'd be happy to share photos with her somehow about it. But all of ours will look different. And it's very nice to see you all. And who was that? Who was
That was
going?
me, Aaron.
Hi,
I'm
Aaron.
calling from Altadena, California. Referred to as he, him. I am making sounds on a drum machine as I listen in tonight. And if Lauren hasn't gone, I call on you next.
Thank you, Aaron. Hi, everybody. This is Lauren. I'm calling in from Topanga, California. And I've been working on mimicking the sky by projecting this light. Can you see it on the wall?
So cool.
It's beautiful.
So that's conceptual embroidery going on. I'll be playing with a leaf. This leaf is from London, and I've been carrying it around for a long time, so it's gotten real lacy and nice. And I pass this on to someone I know and think of in Topanga, Patricia.
Yeah, former Topanga resident, now in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on the lands of the Tewa people. Santa Fe was known as Ogopoge, which means white shell, cold water. I'm she, her pronouns. And Lee, have you gone? You did. Who hasn't? Raise their hand.
I think at this point, everyone has gone.
Okay.
And if you haven't gone, you can introduce yourself after the reading and after discussion. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fires of the West Learning and Native Plant Embroidery Zoom gathering hosted by Metabolic Studio. Since the last presidential election, Lauren Bond and the Metabolic Studio have held potluck, protests, printmaking workshop, and community crafting space every Thursday to process collectively the various traumas of this time. With the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, however, we have shifted gears and created this Zoom space to educate ourselves on critical issues by reading and holding discussions while we craft. We spent the first 12 weeks of this Zoom gathering focused on texts about prison and police abolition. This current series is dedicated to educating ourselves about Fires of the West with a specific focus on native land management and sovereignty, the history of fire suppression, and how we can decolonize our understanding of fire moving forward to create a safer and more resilient West. Many of you here have already received embroidery kits in the mail. In the kit is a line drawing on fabric of a botanical plant representing the food and medicine that Metabolic is currently growing on 2 studio sites along the LA River up in Payahunado, the so-called Owens Valley, where Los Angeles steals its water from, and in Vermont as an effort to give away free food to people in need right now. We drew the images of the plants we're growing, transferred the drawings onto fabric, which we sent to you, along with an embroidery hoop, needles, and a thread. In this kit, you will have also received a self-addressed return envelope with postage. When you have finally finished your embroidery, you can use this to mail it back to the Metabolic Studio. These embroideries will be eventually formed into a hybrid object. If you've not received an embroidery kit, or you finished yours and would like to receive another one, please send an email to info@metabolicstudio.org. Cindy will put that address into the chat bar at this moment. And just please include your mailing address and we will get it out next week before the holidays. Tonight, we will be watching a video of Newton Harrison reciting Living Forests, a Whole Systems Approach, and listening to what Western states can learn from Native American wildfire management strategies. We decided to close the entrance to the Zoom space after the first 15 minutes of the reading to create a better flow for discussion at the end. I am now at this moment going to share my screen and we will begin with the Living Forest video. Please, during this time, make sure that you're muted, and to help with streaming efforts, just turn your video off so that way it won't be glitchy during the video. And it's about a 10-minute video. Hold on. Here.
In many places, the West is afire. As drought continues, temperatures rise, species vanish, forests clear cut, work for many lost, as is infrastructure. Lives endangered, topsoil eroded, the ecosystem simplified. These altogether become a serious contribution to a sixth mass extinction, which is approaching us. We came. We dismissed the first peoples and their knowledge of place. We consumed the forest, the meadowlands. Taking, we forgot to give back. The West covers 11 states and is a physical presence of 1.3 million square miles. The West is not small, taking up a third of the United States, occupied by 72 million people. Within this terrain are 160 million now endangered acres of forest. The West was harvested from a monocultural perspective. The waste profound and pervasive. The life web ignored. Capacity to regenerate impaired. Erosion became a norm. Biodiversity loss incalculable. Trees return after clear cutting or crown fire, thin, crowded, very dense. Density combined with drought invites fire. Crown fires become uncontrollable. Vast amounts of CO2 enter the atmosphere. A tsunami of fire unstoppable until all energy is exhausted. Counter forces are available. For instance, if 1 million acres of overgrown forest were thinned yearly, then these lands become, over the long term, ecologically sustainable, adapting to climate change as it happens, creating jobs, often in small industry, often for the indigenous people who have historic knowledge in assisting the forests here to continue. Imagine a response to these 160 million acres of forests, some intact, but many overcrowded and stressed, where over the long run, by design, catastrophe can be flipped into opportunity. The 8,000 acre Sage Hen project, designed by people at the UC Berkeley Sage Hen Creek Field Station, is deceptively simple. Through 10 years of experimentation, the Sage Hen Group has discovered that fire-endangered forests transformed when thinned to 40 to 60 trees per acre in groupings dispersed variously according to the needs of the topography. The ground plane ecosystem emerges as fire tolerant and catastrophic fires disappear. When the risks of catastrophic fires disappear and ground fires self-extinguish, then the ecosystem is transformed into an open canopy forest with meadowlands randomly appearing, and carbon is sequestered. Wood products are abundant. Then the act of harvesting trees nourishes the ecosystem, providing renewable resource material that revitalizes the economy, while simultaneously storing massive amounts of carbon in the built environment. Excess growth is thinned by hand and by machine. After thinning, before first growth. Soon, ground cover returns rich and resilient, and managed fire benefits the whole. Shipping continues acre by acre. The results of all this thinning are turned into building materials, turning into profit twice, becoming both building materials and carbon credits. If 1 cubic meter of wood in a building effectively sequesters 1 ton of CO2, then a 20-story building will act as a carbon sink for 31 tons of CO2. And 1,200 tons of CO2 emitted in the construction of a 20-story concrete building is eliminated. Then a net difference of 4,300 tons of CO2 is the result. A grand synthesis needs to be designed and put on the ground. Many parts are in place: industry, knowledge, science, with the exception of a viable market. Yet, all are separate, each happening in a different place. We propose a new category entitled Whole System Sites, where a grand synthesis can occur. A guiding metaphor appears. Assisting adaptation is collaboration with nature. And business as usual becomes finding a niche in the life web. Such a site, perhaps 150,000 acres, with a scientific community ensuring the health of the forest, its ground plane and all dependent species, twinned with the ecological imperative are production, manufacturing, and distribution facilities for forest products. And it is clear to all participants that all aspects of this work contribute to the continuing of the whole system site, while conferring benefit on those who work there. And let us remember, 4-second settlement, redundancy, and diversity were the norm, with millions of square miles as the field of play. And let us remember, the forest floor acted as carbon sink. And let us remember, the forest floor was a habitat for many. And let us remember that waters were abundant, but not everywhere. And let us remember, the meadow life was abundant as well. In the largest sense, taking responsibility at this scale, which finally reaches whole system status, is imperative, as it is the only way to virtually eliminate the threat of catastrophic fires, to reduce greenhouse gases in large amounts, reducing the intensity of the climate changing curve, while increasing biodiversity and the availability of water, and mediating at the million square mile scale the effects of an approaching mass extinction. Confronting a $1.5 billion economic irrationality in California fire control. For instance, 15 million acres in California alone are at risk for catastrophic fire at a 1.5 billion a year containment cost. If 1 million acres of overgrown forest were thinned yearly at an average cost of $1,000 per acre and an annual cost of $1 billion, then we're looking at $1 billion allocated annually for 15 years. Fire risk is reduced by 7% each year, mostly eliminating catastrophic fire in California, co-equally reducing the cost of firefighting.
Okay, everybody, we are finished with the video and now we'll move on to the reading. So you can turn your cameras back on if you haven't already. And we're going to be reading from the conversation, What Western States Can Learn from Native American Wildfire Management Strategies. So I'll start it and then we can pass it off to whoever would like to read. So I'll screen share. And then when I've gotten to the point that I'm ready to pass, I'll just ask that somebody step forward. So let me share my screen for that one. Let's see. Let me just make sure we can all see this. Okay. Can everybody read that? Just want to make sure that before I begin, if you can just give me a thumbs up or. Okay, great. What Western states can learn from Native American wildfire management strategies. For several months in 2019, it seemed wildfires wouldn't rage across the West as they had in recent years. But then came the dry autumn and California's Santa Ana and Diablo winds, which can drive the spread of wildfires. Utilities are shutting off power across the state to reduce the risk of damage, equipment, or down trees on wires causing fires. There's no lack of proposals for managing wildfires more effectively. California Governor Gavin Newsom recently signed 22 wildfire-related bills in one day. But what's missing are perspectives from indigenous communities across North America who have lived with fire for thousands of years. In our research on climate change and people's reactions to it, we have worked with the Karuk tribe in northwestern California and southern Oregon on their plan to manage their land under these evolving conditions. American Indian tribes across the West are working with an increased sense of urgency to manage fire-adapted landscapes in the face of climate change. The Karuk tribe's climate adaptation plan directs their efforts to do just that. This work has convinced us that this is an exciting political moment to restore Western forests and protect the public from the dangerous wildfires, and that the tribes are uniquely positioned to lead the way. Would anyone like to read the next part?
I'd be happy to read.
Thank you, Lee.
From colonization to fire suppression, news media coverage of wildfires commonly frames them as natural disasters, dangerous elements of the natural world over which humans have little control. The language of climate change, fear of fire, and the sense that it has become inevitable can be overwhelming, leaving people with the view that little can be done to manage these events. But in fact, people aren't helpless. While fires can be dangerous, they are inevitable and necessary in many ecosystems, and humans have long adapted to them. Across North America, indigenous peoples have actively managed forest ecosystems through the use of fire. Euro-American settlers were struck by the rich biodiversity of California's forests, woodlands, and prairies, but they didn't understand that indigenous peoples' use of fire was responsible for them. Instead, they sought to suppress fires wherever possible. The outright violence of the Mission and Gold Rush periods towards indigenous peoples, followed by the U.S. Forest Service's fire suppression policies, so thoroughly disrupted historic fire regimes that the effects are visible in tree ring data. Would someone else like to read?
I can read. While many view climate change as the major driver of today's megafires, one 2016 study demonstrates how Euro-American colonization caused the largest shifts in fire behaviors in California over the past 400 years. In other words, the genocide of indigenous peoples directly relates to today's catastrophic burning. The interplay between humans, fire, plants, and animals. The Karuk people have developed complex systems of indigenous knowledge over at least the last 10,000 years through direct interaction with their environment. Indigenous sciences include traditional ecological knowledge of the interplay among humans, plants, animals, and natural phenomena. Indigenous peoples have long set low-intensity fires to manage eco-cultural resources and reduce the buildup of fuels, flammable trees, grasses, and brush that cause larger, hotter, and more dangerous fires, like the ones that have burned across the West in recent years. Before fire suppression, forests in the West experienced a mix of low to high severity fires for millennia. Large high severity fires played an important ecological role, yet their spread was limited by low severity fires set by indigenous peoples, much like the prescribed burns land management agencies use today. Karuk use of fire has been central to the evolution of flora and fauna of the mid-Klamath region of Northern California. Sophisticated Karuk fire practices include using frequent low-intensity fires to restore grasslands for elk and maintain Tannoic and black oak acorns. Fires also maintain grasslands that provide quality basketry materials and provide smoke that shades the Klamath River, cooling water temperatures and benefiting fish during the hot, late summer months. As Dr. Frank K. Lake, a Karuk descendant and U.S. Forest Service research ecologist explains, quote, "The Karuk tribe, among others, sees fire as medicine and as such views traditional burning as a human service for ecosystems," unquote. Places where fire has been excluded, he said, quote, "are sick, as are the people who live there. From a tribal perspective, eventually those places then get too much fire, i.e. catastrophic wildfire, like an overdose," end quote. Would someone else like to read? Should I
I'll read.
continue?
Fire suppression as colonial violence. Research in partnership with the Karuk tribe demonstrates how fire suppression and the outlawing of Karuk fire management changes forests from food pantries to food deserts. We understand this exclusion of Karuk management practices as a form of colonial ecological violence. Without fire, the landscape changes dramatically, Ron Reed, a Karuk dip net fisherman, told us. The traditional foods we need for a sustainable lifestyle become unavailable. The spiritual connection to the landscape is altered significantly. As federal forest researchers Jonathan W. Long and Frank K. Lake have found, colonization and the suppression of indigenous management caused incredible harm to Native peoples and created a social ecological trap in which the very practices that enhance ecosystems become more difficult to achieve within present legal and political constraints. The recommendations presented in the Karuk Climate Adaptation Plan understand that socio-ecological solutions are needed to address these traps. Combining Indigenous and Western science, the Karuk Climate Adaptation Plan calls for using Indigenous burning methods as an adaptation for emergency conditions, such as cooling off streams that have been lethally hot for fish. It includes an entire chapter on using prescribed fire to protect critical electrical infrastructure as an alternative to power shutoffs. The plan centers around revitalizing Karuk management and fire science, including use of 23 Karuk cultural indicators across 7 habitat management zones. Some of these species, such as salmon and black oak, are commonly referenced in non-tribal climate plans. Others, such Pacific giant salamander, Indian potatoes, and multiple honeybee species, have received far less attention. These species have stories to tell, lessons of how to get back to traditional management. Bill Tripp, Deputy Director of Ecocultural Revitalization, Karuk Tribe, and lead coordinating author of the climate plan, told us. Much of the plan centers on specific strategies for returning fire to areas that have not burned due to fire suppression. It emphasizes the need for collaboration with the community and land management agencies, increasing public awareness and policy advocacy to get Karuk traditional management and fire back onto the land. Would someone else like to take over?
I could. Burning as restoration. Federal, state, and local government agencies are increasingly recognizing Indigenous burning as an ecosystem component and restoration technique. We believe the crisis of climate change offers land managers an opportunity to remedy inappropriate socio-ecological actions and create successful collaborations to promote collective survival. We agree with Canuck Natural Resources Director Leif Hillman's statement that, quote, "We have to reestablish a positive relationship with fire. Fear of fire has gotten us to the place where we need to be afraid of fire today," end quote. Bill Tripp, Deputy Director of Ecocultural Revitalization at the Karuk Tribe and a Karuk tribal member, contributed to this article.
Thank you, everybody that participated in reading tonight. At this point, what we're going to do is break out into small discussion groups with about 3 people to a room. So if you do not want to participate in that, we ask that you sign off now. The discussion groups are only about 6 minutes long, and then we all come back together as a whole and we have a larger discussion about what we discussed in the individual groups. While I'm setting up that breakout room, would somebody like to read the discussion, the guidelines for discussion? If not, Emily will step in and read them. Let me pull that up. Let's see. Okay, Emily, let me. Do you see it?
I've got it.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, then I can stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, I can read it from my email. Should I go ahead?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, everyone, here are our discussion guidelines. Number 1, we agree not to blame ourselves or others for the misinformation we have learned, but to accept responsibility for not repeating misinformation after we have learned otherwise. Number 2, we agree to listen respectfully to each other without interruptions. Only one person speaks at a time. Number 3, we acknowledge that we may be at different stages of learning on the content and discussion topics. Number 4, we agree that no one should be required or expected to speak for their whole race or gender. We can't, even if we wanted to. Number 5, we will hold each other's best interests at heart. We hope everyone has a share. We will trust that people are doing the best they can. Let's challenge and encourage each other to do better. Number 6, share responsibility for including all voices in the discussion. If you have a tendency to dominate discussions, try taking a step back. If you tend to stay quiet, try challenging yourself to share ideas so others can learn from you. Number 7, silence is golden. Sometimes there will be long pauses. Sometimes silence can create space for folks who need that space to come forward. We agree to not fill silences out of discomfort. We will hold this silence with care and move forward intentionally. We welcome those of you whose minds are bursting with ideas to write them in the chat bar. Number 8, the facilitators are not experts. They are here to help facilitate the process. They and everyone in the group are here to learn. Number 9, it's okay not to know. Keep in mind that we are still learning. We are all still learning and are bound to make mistakes when approaching a complex task or exploring new ideas. Be open to changing your mind and make space for others to do so as well. Number 10, the facilitators are not moderators. They are not trained to moderate personal grievances. If discussion stops being about the reading and instead breaches into accusations and aggression, please respect the facilitator switching gears and refocusing on the text. Final note here, if any of these guidelines are breached, a metabolic team member will reach out to you privately in the chat to provide a reminder. If the guidelines continue to be breached, they will provide a verbal call in. By staying on this Zoom call, you are agreeing to these community guidelines for our discussion period. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I have created the breakout room, so I'm going to send you all the notification to join that room. Like I said, you'll be in there for about 6 minutes, and I'll send incremental markers to let you know to let another person talk during that time. And then, unfortunately, there's no way to easily get you back. Once I say we're closing the room, so you've got 60 seconds to wrap it up, but you can feel free to continue your discussion when you come back to the group. So enjoy your discussions, and I'll see you all in 6 minutes. Hello. Welcome back.
I left by accident.
Oh,
I
well,
put-
I closed,
like computer finger. Hi.
oh, I closed it out. So I think it automatically brings you back though, but you actually
No,
closed out?
I went to like swipe it away and then I was like, boom, like Star Trek. Like, phew, I was back.
Well, we welcome you back.
Glad to be here.
Thanks, Jen.
Oh,
Hi.
June.
June.
Can you say hi?
Oh,
Berry.
hi.
Juniper Berry.
Oh,
Oh my God, so cute. Naked baby in space. Like an album cover.
It's a good name for an album, actually. Naked Baby in Space.
Welcome back, everybody.
Naked babies in space?
Yeah, that's my
Yes.
new album.
It's great. Perfect.
Wow.
Well, I hope you all had wonderful discussions. Would anyone care to share what they talked about in their breakout room?
I would love to share that we celebrated Winona LaDuke being nominated for Secretary of the Interior.
Deb Holland.
Deb nominated her as
No, it's Deb Holland. She's the Congresswoman from New Mexico, the first district. She's not Winona.
no,
But Winona LaDuke was happy that she was
Oh,
nominated.
she was happy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this woman, I've been on two very like intimate like this Zooms with her. And the minute she spoke and started talking, I was like, who is this person? She's awesome.
We're gonna have, I trust we will have a return to competency in government now. Or at least an attempt at competency.
I had a thought before I so unceremoniously pressed the eject button from my breakout room, which I didn't mean to do, which is, thinking about my experience with the Owens Dry Lake in Long Pine in Owens Valley, and thinking about the dust cams that were put out there in order to track for the EPA and the Great Basin Air Quality Control District the size and the extent and the frequency of the dust storms. So there's those kind of cams, and there's also the nature cams now where you can see the wildlife, drinking from the little different water stations. I wondered about the idea of a project, and maybe this already exists, about placing fire cams. I know that there are fire stations and lookout towers, but so people can actually experience what it looks like with the regrowth after a fire, because there's so much trepidation about fire and fire as a destructive entity instead of as a healing and natural process. And thinking about my experience of driving through the Malibu Hills, God, like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks after the fire there, and it started to look a little bit like Ireland. It was like green and fuzzy. Life was just coming back. And so I just wonder about, if there was a camera project like that could kind of track what happens after a controlled burn or even a natural fire. That might be something that could break the consciousness open of humans, that this could actually be a beneficial thing if we know how to use the tool.
Yeah, good.
And if it's a video, people will actually watch it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, Rochelle.
I have a lot of experience with surveillance cams with with our work at Metabolic Studio. So just like, I'm fascinated by that, of just kind of tracking time lapse and just seeing what the opportunity is to see, the burn and then what happens afterwards, because we very rarely get a chance to see the benefits afterwards, at least in my experience.
Sounds like a good project.
I've been wondering about before the snow fell out in the Midwest, there was we do a lot of prairie burning, a lot of burning of grasslands, and it's not for fire suppression, it's for regrowth, and it's very broadly accepted. And I wonder why prairie burning and intentional burning of prairies is so widely accepted, where there's really no consequence of them not being burned other than the certain plants won't regenerate as well, where there's such a consequence to bringing burns to intentional burning and traditional burning to forests. It's like, I'm not sure why there's such a resistance to it. And maybe it's because our prairies are more either large pieces of land that don't have residents throughout, or the remnants, and they're highly managed landscapes anyway. So I'm not, it's always so funny to me, like, why is it something that's something we burn our landscapes all the time? Why is it that it's such a why is it so hard for the powers that be to accept traditional burning of landscapes and bringing intentional burning into the picture in the West, where the consequences are so dire?
That's a really interesting point, Nancy. One of the things that I thought about from the second article that I didn't know, in the Karuk plan, they had identified that pooling streams was one of the things that they wanted to do. And I had never even thought about the water and the streams heating up in a fire. I don't know why. I just thought it wouldn't touch it. And I didn't think about the wildlife in the water and the streams, and how they would be a threat. And so that was kind of interesting to learn that piece of information and get a better understanding. I didn't grow up with fires. I grew up with like possible tornadoes in Ohio, and we hid in a basement. So that was the extent of fires. I did what I'd see on TV, really.
I thought the analogy of the overdose and the image of the overdose was really interesting, and the idea of fire as medicine, and kind of recounting a process and a history in which we haven't taken our medicine, so to speak, so then these catastrophic overdoses occur. It was just an image I had not conceived of before, and I found it very provocative.
So, Nancy, your question about why the fire is so scary to us, and we know how beneficial it is, and we don't use it. I think part of indigenous practices was that their attachment was to the land rather than to the structures that they built upon it. Those were movable or replaceable or returned to the land. We go in and we do hard structures that can't be moved. We do them on the floodplain, and then we channel the river and build dams rather than moving our homes away from the river. And I think the same is true with the fire. We build our homes in direct pathways of fire, and then we protect the home over the nature that surrounds it.
Mm.
I wanted to bring up something I thought about listening to Newton Harrison, who I've known for a long time and know his work really well. And it hit me that a lot of their work, he and Helen have relied on data, as a lot of artists who address environmental issues. And I just think today, how quickly the data is changing, that it can be very confusing. That's why I asked, what year is this video? Because, you know, in the last 2 years, a lot has happened. I mean, just this last year alone is going to change everything. And I think sometimes, yeah, when a lot of environmental artists first started doing this work, the data was the cool part because it helped you conceptualize what's going on. And now it's happening so fast. I don't know if that's the direction to go anymore to inspire change. It seems like it needs to be more spiritual or cultural than completely data driven. That's just a thought I had.
Thank you, Patricia. I think that's a really interesting point about data and transformation of these numbers at a pace that is hard to imagine when you're writing a piece like Newton did there. It made me think also about the nearly 90-year-old Sir Roger Penrose, who this week was talking about his kind of observational and mathematical proof that there is observable residue from big bangs that came before ours in the universe. And by looking carefully at those, we can also see where we're going. And I'm not sure exactly how to synthesize why I'm thinking of that in relationship to what you're saying, but I think that Newton and Helen, but I know Newton better at this point, uses his data metaphorically to ground the unknowable in something that seems knowable, if that makes any sense. So by saying something like 160 million acres of forest, that kind of grounds me as a listener in something that seems more knowable, even though I still can't fathom 160 million acres. It seems more knowable than any other way of describing something. And I think that a lot of Newton's numbers are metaphors for kind of grounding data, using data to ground unknowable quantities in people's imagination. So, but I think it's a really good point about what you're saying about how if you are an artist or an ecologically driven thinker, how do you communicate the moment in relationship to the pace of the challenge? especially if you're talking about the sixth mass extinction or the degradation of, the atmosphere we breathe, or, all the rest of it. That it's not fixed in space and it's moving, the needle is moving so rapidly. How do you talk about the now in a way that isn't dated within a year or two?
Their audience has not always been an art audience, and a lot of their audience has been through the years cities, government. And I think the delivery often is as if they're trying to appeal to a governmental agency, or which is different than just talking to an art audience, let's say. But yeah, I don't know. I just think, yeah, certain numbers. I mean, I've written a education curriculum guide, and that was one of the things I noticed. It was right before Hurricane Sandy hit New York. It was Eve Mosher's high waterline guide, and once the hurricane hit, I had to go back and rewrite it. And I thought, okay, these numbers are going to start changing so fast that you really have to focus on key things that will be consistent, that you can talk about concepts around those consistencies instead of constantly hitting people with numbers. But anyway, Helen and Newton's project, I've been to the botanical gardens in Santa Cruz when they presented the, what's it called? The Future Garden. That's a great project. Yeah. And that's about, and that's what I love about their work, is that they see so far ahead that they can come up with plans that people haven't thought about yet, 50 years, 60 years. And this idea of coming up with plant species that adapt, the whole adaptation thing, when they started throwing that out there, I was like, yes, this is spot on. So yeah, if you haven't seen their future gardens, in fact, they want them to be replicable, and they could be developed in any botanical garden or anywhere.
For anybody who doesn't know about that project, Future Gardens takes the idea of using plant material, both seeds and bacteria and mycelium, that would have existed on the Earth the last time the temperature on planet Earth is what it's projected to be in 100 years. And it cultivates those seeds for use as the climate changes. So the idea is to grow a future garden in an environment that, like Picasso said about his portrait of Gertrude Stein, when she said, "But this doesn't look like me," and he said, "Well, don't worry, it will." It's the same kind of idea to cultivate the garden that we're going to need in the future.
One thought I have to share about this kind of crisis of what is knowable and what is unknowable, and what can we imagine and what haven't we imagined. There is something I think about in terms of a crisis of imagination just at the municipal level, in terms of fire calamity. One bit of information I could share about my hometown in Southern Oregon that burned in the Alameda fire just a few months ago. There was no thought at the state or local level that the scale and the speed of the fire which occurred could ever happen. So there was no emergency planning in place to alert residents of the area that they needed to evacuate. So there was no text alert. There was just no thought that something could happen this big and this fast. So there wasn't the preparation that could have saved lives, both human and animal lives. So it's interesting to think about how crises have all these different faces and all these different repercussions that are coexisting.
One thing I wanted to say was, and this kind of, it was Aaron's cosmic background that kind of prompted me to think about this, was that what many people use or refer to or feel that they're using when they say, oh, here are some scientific data, is actually just a very limited interpretation of where science is today. And I'm referring to the cosmic background because it's been over a century that the whole quantum world really was elucidated and brought into being and expressed by so many people, from Niels Bohr to Heisenberg and so forth. And what they demonstrated was that everything that the sort of determinate world of Newtonian physics that was taken to be the sort of law of the universe was just a sort of a pygmy version of description of the universe. And so all these numbers and statistics and measurements and constants were just an illusion that we had the tools at the time to see or to measure. And most people have just never been shaken out of that sort of medieval era description of the world. And if they were really to take seriously the revelations of the quantum world, it says that the nature of reality is not determinate, is completely unknowable, is spontaneous from moment to moment. There's no direct cause and effect. And all of those things have been demonstrated in experiments. But it's very hard for, I think, people's minds to accept that at the level of the subatomic scale, that, reality is something just sort of beyond our control and beyond our capacity to map out and to delineate and to fix in equations. And the greatest scientific minds were the people who said this. And yet there's just like legions of, lesser beings, ourselves included, that use science as if it was this determinate world. And we can control it and manipulate it. And the thought I had about the reference that Patricia made to the first movie was exactly that. Here's a person trying to use sort of facts and figures and using that same hackneyed, tired old Western paradigm of let's manipulate the system and fix it so that we can, get the greatest, resolve the greatest benefit out of it. And it just completely misses the point. So if we were to be true to science, then we would end up almost in the same place as the indigenous wisdom, which is that, much of it has to be taken on a spiritual belief that we're just sort of here on this earth, part of the rest of creation. And we have to sort of know our place, really. Even our vision, that we believe that we have continuous vision, is in fact been shown to be a series of inferences between stopgap images. Nothing is as it seems. So that was with respect to that beautiful thought you expressed, Lauren, about unknowable and pinning it down to something that we feel we can know and handle and wrap our minds around.
I don't know that this relates to anything, but Lauren, when you brought up, the idea of Penrose, and I'm just connecting a few ideas that have been floating around in the studio and in the news and general consciousness. So kalpa is the Buddhist notion of, I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but a kalpa would be if you had a mountain that was like 16 times the size of Mount Everest, and each 100 years you brushed a piece of silk on the top of the mountain, that, and maybe somebody can describe it better, but eventually when that mountain would be gone, it would be, I think, less than a kalpa. So just the idea of infinity. And then the other notion that I think, Lauren, you shared this a few weeks ago, how now things, I don't know if everyone can hear me. I don't know if people can hear me.
The voice was distorted a bit.
Lost everybody. Can anybody hear me?
Voice was
Roxanne,
distorted.
it was choppy. Can you repeat it again?
I am sorry. I don't know. My internet today. Can you hear me?
I'm so sorry, Roxanne. At least from my end, it's still coming in choppy. I don't know about everybody else.
Yes, for me as well. Unfortunately, Roxanne, you begin to expound, then it gets all choppy, and then we can hear you say clearly, "Can you hear me?" Oh, I'm so sorry to laugh, but unfortunately, that's the way it's coming through to me as well.
I'm so sorry. Maybe you can hear me now?
Better.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll try again. But anyway, the human beings have the weight of all the things that we've produced is more than all the natural things on the planet, and just somehow that, like, this period of evolution has come to the human beings just totally molding the planet into this kind of ridiculous conglomeration of human desire, and somehow this is just not even one wave of the silk on the mountain, and we're just part of an infinite process. So it's just seems so futile that we've been so self-fulfilling in a way. Yeah, I don't know if I've really said anything, but just those ideas are coming together in my mind.
I just would like to add to that by emphasizing that a lot of the literature in the climate change world emphasizes that it's not all human beings. The greatest burden of, the greatest portion of that footprint, that heavy footprint that you're referring to, is actually just accruing from a very small number of people. And it's quite notable, the difference between people. It's like the small minority of super rich have just more things, need bigger houses, etc.
Would anyone like to share what they're working on at this point? I can share that I got a little bit further tonight. I can also share that I will never embroider an entire flower in white. It is very hard to see. I will be using bright colors next time. I didn't realize that this was so challenging. So I've learned a lesson. I mean, I'm not sure what you're showing. It's kind of coming in and coming out because your background.
Oh, I just did a little drawing I was trying to show, that's all.
I'm working on this butterfly thing, but I'm having a really hard time on these petals. They don't have any kind of like, I don't know. They kind of like run into each other. I'm trying different stitches and I don't know. We'll see. If anybody has this pattern, I'd love to cheat and see what you guys are working on.
Hey, Cindy, can you put it closer to the? They look great.
Yeah, hold it up there for a second.
Wait, I don't know. This way. Yeah.
I think
That's beautiful.
Ooh, wow, look at those.
I love the purple.
Yeah.
My butterfly I'm happy with, but the leaves or the petals, I don't know what to do.
I mean, maybe you could consider adding like another color yellow to accent it the way the purples work together, like maybe almost like a shadow line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they are all kind of one color.
So it might pop it out in the same way that that your butterfly wing looks so amazing.
Thank you.
Was it Ansu who was doing a bee? Who was doing the bee?
Yes, it's me with the big block of black. I don't know what to do.
So here's where I'm at, but I
Oh, okay, yeah, that looks really good.
I don't know about that, but I just thought I'd show it to you. I also have a colored, a different color thread that has like silver in it that I'm gonna lace it, in different places as well. I'm hoping I have enough.
Can I see the bee again, just so I can see what a big block of black looks like? Because I'm scared to do that. Actually, it looks very effective because of the yellow contrast. It does look good.
Don't be scared. Just dive in and have fun.
I'm
picturing
making this
bee. Let me change my background.
I love the textures.
Yeah.
So in this bee, wait, can you see? What I did is I just ended up like doing all sorts of colors and like the different yellows and whites in different directions to add different textures in addition to like the traditional black and yellow. So have fun with it. Honestly, I enjoyed that process so much.
Wow, you're creative. It's good.
I'd like to try to show you a picture on my phone. I had that bee as well, but I don't have it anymore. But I could always email. I did lots of colors and different stitches.
Oh my goodness, it's so fuzzy.
It is, yes.
Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous.
Thank you. It was
Oh
fun.
gosh, very nice.
Thank you.
Joan, was that single strand or double strand?
They were, I used 4 strands. Do you mean, did I double my thread up?
Your thread, yeah.
Yeah, well, I would use 4 threads of the 6 threads and the embroidery floss.
Joan,
What's that?
can you hold it up again?
Sure. And I'd be happy to email these pictures if someone wants to send me.
You
but they
can attach them as a file, I think, on this Zoom chat thing.
Really?
try, but I mean, they're on my phone.
Oh, gotcha.
And I'm on a computer. Yeah, so I used 4 strands of the embroidery floss as a single strand. I mean, that was a little silly, but the fabric was so thin. So that's what I did.
Beautiful.
Hey, Jen, do you have technique that you use to go from 6 strands to 4 strands? Because I seem to, when I'm doing it, when I pull it out, like it gets to a certain point and then it like knots up like crazy. And I didn't know if there was like a trick that I'm missing because it's driving me nuts.
I believe there's a trick. You never cut more than 18 inches at a time.
Or an arm's length.
Really? Okay. Because I'm doing more than that. So I'll start cutting back.
No, you will notice on the back of some of mine that there are some messes where there, it got to be a knot that I couldn't undo that got stuck on the back. But no, I just tried to do it carefully. No special technique, just not too long a strand of thread.
Wait, do you mean that you actually didn't put just one of these on, but you put in several different colors at once? Again, through the eye of the needle, or no?
No, I would just use one color at a time, but I wouldn't fill up that whole block with the same color. Although I think there was a time I might have taken a couple, because I had a lot of leftovers, like I'm sure you all do, bits and bobs of thread, and I might have put a couple of strands of different colors together, but not that often.
I learned my trick about the 18 inches from this book, which is really hard to show you. The Encyclopedia of Stitchery.
Oh, wonderful. I'm going to write that down.
Oh,
what
did you recommend?
Very nice.
Emily and Sylvia both have the same book.
I got it because Sylvia recommended it.
Okay.
Just showing you.
What's it called again? I missed it. The Complete Encyclopedia?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Not that I need to add another book. I have so many I have to read over the holidays, but this would be useful.
Let's see.
Oh, Kaz, are you wanting to share? You want to unmute so we can hear you?
Oh, it's an avocado, sort of.
Whoa.
It's getting there.
Nice.
Thank you.
I finished mending my pants.
Nice.
Wonderful.
I'm going to go. It was lovely to be with you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you next time. Before anyone else signs off, I just wanted to mention that we will be holding a reading next Friday. For those of you that are interested in joining, we'll send out the Eventbrite information next week, but it'll be same time, same place.
Well, I made some leaf prints.
Ooh, that's beautiful. From that leaf that you showed in the beginning?
What's the color, the material from the color? How did that work?
It's made from different soils that I've gathered.
Wow.
So it's like a earth broth.
Oh, I love it.
And it's on handmade paper.
Wow.
Beautiful. And I made about 20 of them.
Wow.
Is each one different?
Yeah. Same leaf.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So pretty.
Lauren, will that ink work on fabric?
I don't think so. It's not. I don't think it's like a permanent. I don't think there's a permanent component to it.
Okay, more like a stain. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
The tea stain.
It's kind of got. I put some sap in it too, so it's a bit sticky.
Is that Topanga soil?
This is the hybrid. This is actually some loamy soil from up in the Owens Valley, from a kind of creek I go to, and it's some clay from the industrial corridor where the Metabolic Studio is, and then it's got some like recently brewed compost from Topanga. with some sap that I collected the last time I was in New England. So it's kind of like a whatever was in the kitchen counter kind of brew.
Wow.
Partly inspired by Nance's book on pigment, on color, on soil, where that artist was working and making her own pigments. I just started to collect stuff that could be.
That's nice.
I collected many different colors when I lived in Topanga. There's purple, yellow, red.
Where did you find your purple?
Go up above the state park. You know,
Okay.
when you go right and you do that long hike towards the ocean,
Yeah.
it's on the left. Yeah, it's on it's one of the walls that you pass.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
go find some. That would be really fun.
I used to take a backpack and take Gabe up there and fill up the back, you know, with cans, bottles, whatever, fill them up and then walk back with this big heavy load. I still have some of them.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you keep around for you can't say over here you're keeping it for a rainy day because
That's when you find the soils. You don't find them in the summertime, right?
Exactly.
When it's wet, you can see the purple better.
Exactly.
I'm going to take off, everybody. It's great to see you. Good night.
Hi, Joan.
Hey, Joan.
Oh, I got 2 pictures up in the chat.
Oh.
So
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Take
care.
Job.
I'm going to sign off too tonight. Good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. And,
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
Good night, Maria.
Merry Christmas, and some of you might be at our at the performance on Monday night of the
Yeah.
winter solstice, but everybody will get that announcement, I guess. Okay.
What is that?
I'm downloading one of the images. It's like 3 megabytes. It's taking a while.
I tried to download that neither of them would open.
So where do they land? Do they go on your desktop or?
It said that the files might have been damaged and I couldn't open them.
Well, mine has a green thing, you know, check mark as if I've downloaded it, but click to open.
Me too.
It'll just, yeah, be on your desktop.
But when I click to open, it says this file could not be opened. It may be
Oh.
damaged.
Well, let's see. Maybe it's your computer. No, mine opened.
Yeah.
I was able to open mine as well.
Yeah, mine's not opening. It won't even let me click on it, even though it says I can. So you're all ahead of me.
This is helpful. I'm glad you did that. Mine doesn't look so bad now.
Mine says it might be damaged, so I can't do it. So you could open it, Patricia?
Yeah, I'm opening a second one now.
Wow.
Will you try resending it in the chat bar for those?
I'm
that it
on
might
a
have been-
Mac, on an iMac.
Can you share your screen?
Or maybe if you send it, because I'm on a Mac too.
Oh, you want me to share my screen and make it big and then you can take a picture?
Okay.
See, we're getting smart on technology here. Okay. Okay, so the second one I couldn't open. I opened the bottom one first. Okay, so let's see here. Can I share my screen? Yeah. There you go. Ooh. I'm gonna snapshot that.
That's great.
Wow. Pretty.
Very
Wow.
nice.
A little bit of cream colored thread or beige is beautiful.
I love the knot.
I do too. The little curly knots are great. It looks like a furry bumblebee.
It looks like two-tone yellow too.
Those are her pollen pants.
Everybody get a picture?
Yeah, got a picture. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, I have it open too.
Command 3 will take a picture of your whole screen.
Thank you.
I'm gonna take off too. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Hi, Lily.
Good night. See you next time.
Me too. Bye.
Bye, Nance.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Good night, everybody. I'm going to sign off. My belly is growling.
Good night, Rochelle.
Hi,
Good weekend.
Rochelle.
See everybody.
Good night, Rochelle.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
I think I'm gonna follow her lead. My belly is growling too. It's been wonderful to spend the evening with you all. I never get to stay this late.
It was nice having you and June.
Wonderful
Yeah.
to see. Oh yeah, she
Great
knows
to see
this.
you again.
Have a good weekend, you guys.
Good night, you
Thank
too.
you.
Karen.
Ansu, where are you located?
In Palms in West LA.
Oh, right. Okay. I used to live right by there. I
Oh, yeah.
really like what you had to say, you know, how you worded it and all that. I wish I had a recording.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I always think that when people and yet, you know, nobody really even catches on to it because they just don't want to I don't know, they just don't want to hear it, I guess.
With the big picture?
Well, about the fact that quantum, the nature of reality as revealed by quantum physics really blows a hole in the certainty that they feel that objective science gives, you know. And many, especially men, who feel that whenever they use science, that means it's true.
Well, it is true in that world, you know, and there are multiple worlds and perspectives at the same time. I mean, what's it called? A deep truth, right? It's opposing knowledge is they're both equally true, but they oppose each other.
Well, I mean, I think they have a tendency to say that, well, the very word true is
right.
Problematic. They have a tendency to say that if science has an equation to describe it, then it's true. And if it comes from cultural origins, then it's not true. Or it needs to be first proven by science to be true. And those things are just false dichotomies is what really, I think, that the quantum physicists have really shown, because they don't know the truth. The whole model of science is a model that humans invented.
Do you remember that film? It was called What the Bleep Do We Know?
Is that a movie?
Yeah, I mean, it was like a documentary. It was Marlene Matlin, you know, the actress who is deaf mute.
Mm.
And it goes through her, you know, it's a fiction story about her life, but it completely adjusts, reality and what's real, what's not real. It's kind of scary to watch it because you think about how people carry drama for a whole lifetime, and you know, dramatic events that cause them a lot of pain.
Ego. It's so much
Right.
ego delusions, you know.
And it just shows how it's all constructed and how you carry it with you and how you replay it. I mean, we're hardwired, our brains are, I always say human beings aren't meant for the world that we live in today. It's too fast. Like it takes, you know, 50, 60 years to gain certain knowledge, and we don't have that, you know, time.
Well, I think there's plenty of writing about, I mean, isn't Eckhart Tolle's whole series of books just about that? Basically that, you know, the human brain has this proclivity to create a reality that's absolutely just a constructed one. And our frontal lobes that are so advanced and that we think makes us superior to all other life because we have that self-awareness and linguistic capability and grammar and everything that's in the frontal lobe. All of that is causing us to, enables us to create these realities. And then we live as if those realities have some reference in the real world, and it's just not the case. But I mean, the entire planetary destruction is based on that. All the wars, all religion, everything is on that.
Shoot. I sent it to Jen. I'll send it to everybody. Yeah. I think there was a follow-up done to it, the original. The original was early. Yeah, there were some kind of early films like this that the general public was not ready for. But
oh my gosh, so many deep thoughts coming.
Has anybody seen that movie, The Infinite Potential?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I think I watched it and I don't know if I really connected to it, but I know that, you know, it synthesizes a lot of these people that we're talking about. I mean, I know Penrose is in there and it's
you know, I have to watch that movie again because wasn't it about some Western scientist meeting an Eastern philosopher and their similarities, ultimately they're the same thing or something?
It's about the conversations between Krishnamurti and David Bohm.
Right.
Okay. But it includes like Einstein and
right.
I don't know, but I remember kind of being disappointed, like thinking that it was gonna do something more, but I don't know. I need to see it again. It does talk about quantum and
yeah, I mean, I've read quite a bit about quantum, and I think now you made me recall, and I thought that well, you have to read multiple sources like we have done in the series to really get an understanding. And I mean, I think it's one of those good sources, but it's definitely not, you know, the encyclopedia. And I don't think there is an encyclopedia. But Bohm was a great thinker, I thought, and a maverick. Yeah.
I have another one, Mind Walk. This is Fritjof Capra's brother, Bernd. He actually lived in Topanga for a long time. Do you know about him, Lauren?
No.
Yeah, he did the film Mind Walk. It came out in 1990.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's Bernd Capra, and it's Fritjof's brother who did it. He lived in the rodeo grounds when they were kicking people out of there. He was the last one to leave.
I mean, down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really sad. Yeah, I moved in 99. What year did you move in, Lauren?
2001.
Yeah, just right after. And yeah, it moved fast after that. You know, the people who lived there in the 90s, there were still people living under the bridges, and there were people living in Arundel Donek's houses that they constructed over the creek. You know, and I remember it was in the local paper when they kicked this guy out from under the bridge. Some new people had moved into the canyon. They're like, there's somebody living under the bridge. They kept calling the cops. And this guy had been under there for like 20 years or something. I forget how many years. And he had an undergraduate degree in math from UCLA, but he just didn't want to be a part of the, you know, normal world. He wanted to live under his bridge in Topanga Canyon. So there was a lot of that until about the time that we got there, and then it slowly cleaned out after 9/11. But people went and took photographs of that, and I've been waiting for a book on that. Anyway, I got off topic here, but Mind Walk, yeah, is another one. These are all good. I want to watch all of them. The Infinite Potential.
Does anybody know this book? I just found it on my shelf. I don't know.
No, I don't know that one.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's
Sorry,
string,
what does it say?
the back of the book says string theory, many physicists believe is the key to the unified field theory that eluded Einstein for more than 30 years, deftly uniting quantum mechanics and general relativity, the two pillars of modern physics. String theory declares that all of the wondrous happenings in the universe arise from the vibrations of one single entity, microscopically tiny loops of energy that lie deep within the heart of matter, etc., etc. Yeah.
Yeah, Brian Greene, he went to Harvard, then he got his doctorate from Oxford. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He teaches at Columbia in New York City. Do we have a due date on our pieces?
Not really. We're gonna start another reading series in a few weeks and just keep embroidering until till we can stop quarantining.
Okay.
So we're just gonna keep going with the native plants until it's over.
Okay.
Endurance embroidery.
I wonder how many collective stitches we've done as a group in this process. That would be an interesting number to calculate, how many stitches.
But I wanted to chat just for a couple of minutes with you guys that are still remaining about what's next for our learning together. You know, we've done 12 weeks now on abolitionist reading, and then we did 12 weeks at the end of next week. It'll be 12 weeks of Fires of the West, and there's a couple of things that have come up that connect the dots here with abolitionist reading and with Fires of the West, and one of them is capitalism. And so we were thinking potentially about trying to put together a syllabus on capitalism. So that's one idea, but it's more than just capitalism. It's also how we as a species have been trading valuable things in order to manifest ourselves in the world, and specifically about empire building. Like when you think about salt, for example, there's a whole book on salt that I would consider beginning with. But I also feel like, you know, just saying if there's anything, because we talked a lot about mathematical complexity tonight too, and about the relationship between complexity and biodiversity really takes on a really big it's understanding complexity, which is a way forward, because our monoculture really favors a reductive way of thinking, which I think is connected to the forest fire story. So I'm also kind of thinking about, I'm at this edge between capitalism and complexity. And I would just wanted to throw out that being at a pivot moment, I would really love to know what Ansu and Patricia have to say about this. Emily's going to work with me on the syllabus either direction, but she knows more than she's done more reading and more learning on capitalism and the theories of capitalism than I have. But what are your thoughts? If you want to share any.
I kind of feel like discussing capitalism is painful.
Yeah.
And I feel like we already know.
Agree.
You know, it's a problem. I don't know. I kind of feel like that we're coming out of, and I'm doing this also, you know, I'm trying to figure out my programs with Eco Art Space right now too. And, you know, we're in the next year going to be getting back to some kind of normal, you know, a new normal, whatever. But I think it's important that we get inspired during this next few months. And, you know, tools. You know, how are we going to move forward? What can you do in your own community? So, yeah, people power. Do you know?
No, I like the idea of visioning something beyond capitalism, because it's been pillage, monoculture, reductionism, and simplification. And this idea of complexity that you introduced is really great, because diversity and complexity is resilience ultimately.
Yeah, beyond capitalism. Yeah.
Beyond capitalism, moving towards complexity. I worry about words that become almost jingoistic. Like it's like capitalism it's a very heavy word, you know, I'm not sure that without having, you know, an economics background, or I don't know, it's just a little bit intimidating to try and put together.
Complex.
Yeah, I like the idea of envisioning and you know, a people-powered movement of some sort.
I like the idea of complexity, but I definitely would be interested in the level of complexity that includes non-human beings, because I'm a little tired of the world of humans. I think that capitalism immediately, you know, draws a hard line between our interrelatedness, and maybe we should think about beyond our species economies.
Yeah, thank you. That's very well put, and it would be a very good follow-on to this year's inquiry in terms of the studio's public programming, which was interdependence. So to move from interdependence into complexity is kind of an interesting idea. Maximum complexity, bring it on. Make space for complexity.
How about indigenous wisdom and indigenous knowledge? I mean, there's been this kind of, I feel it's a reductionist way of describing it, but they call it traditional ecological knowledge. But really behind that is just a whole worldview that we need to elevate in in common parlance, in that all of us could educate ourselves and be conduits for others as well. So that's one thing I would say, because I know that they for sure would have a different economics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in where the overlap between science and indigenous knowledge, you know.
Oh yeah, I like that.
How we've been on this planet for so long already as humans, and really science is how big a part of that. And you know, I always look back at my ancestors, and they lived into their 90s, and like, how did they do that if they didn't have doctors and science and, you know, data reports? So
They didn't have microscopes, no microbiology, no nothing, but they were super advanced, exactly, because they had different
how they,
approach
their ability to
knowledge.
see, yeah, and kind of a survival mechanism, all that stuff that we're losing, you know. They say within the next 30 years, we won't have enough people who have the skills to like fix things, you know, like, or plumbing, or 60% of households hire out to do work on their houses. You know, I think, yeah, skill workers like that are scarce.
You made me think, Patricia, the interplay between science and indigenous knowledge is really also a progression of historical time period, because it really was maybe the 19th century post-Enlightenment kind of era when this Western science became such a dominant way of thinking that removed spirituality, that cordoned it off from the human experience, that made everything more materialistic. And that's worth looking at. 1800s, yeah.
1860s are really when it popped. That was when I was going to write my PhD paper on. I made a proposal for it, but I decided not to go on to school. But at Oxford, not the university, but the Oxford Brookes University. And yeah, because that's, yeah, not only the separation of then, you know, the church didn't have the control that they used to have, but it was like all of a sudden, yeah, all these inventions and what else is out there that we don't know about, that we've been relying on our experience that's been handed down through stories and cultural, you know, traditions and how we were raised and all that. And then all of a sudden now there's like this magic out there that we didn't know about, you know, like people are using telephones and electricity and
am I on or not? Oh, and ultimately, it just seems like we still are those same people from the pre-Enlightenment era.
Yeah, it's not that long ago. Yeah.
And we have, we've sort of conveniently like merged and displaced one with the other. And we don't realize that we're using science in very much the same way that maybe people use that religious belief before. It's become a replacement, you know, a lodestar for us, a guiding star. And that's been also destructive. And it's also linked to this reductionist way of seeing the land and our relationships with the world as material based rather than any ethical consideration. So this in the chat I'm reading from Kaz about indigenous wisdom, I think they've never removed knowledge of the world, separated knowledge of the world from their humanity, their positioning of humans within the spectrum of the world. Whereas we have used science to say that because we have science, we are superior. That's the one part of our brain that makes us superior to all other beings, is that scientific rationality. I think that's pretty disturbing and very crucial to our stories about ourselves in the modern age. Yeah. Oh, lovely. I love that book.
I did a workshop in Mérida in the Yucatan in January 2019, and it was on indigenous knowledge. And it was a group out of Boston, and they brought in all these speakers, and it was pretty powerful. And there were, yeah, like the Aztecs, they had a lot of wisdom and knowledge, right? I mean, it was patriarchal, but
Yeah, I've been to that plaza in Merida where they have those Aztec demonstrations and hockey games and fire playing and things like that. They have a nice museum in Merida.
it's a really wonderful city. And there are some people who live here in Santa Fe who live there also and go back and forth. I've met, yeah, there were a lot of expats there, American expats. And I went to Uxmal, which was awesome.
Yes, it is nice.
Yeah, I'm late to the Mexico thing. Like, I wish I had traveled there 20, 30 years ago. Do bees have white butts? Their hind end, I'm just thinking of making the hind end all white.
Go for it.
I didn't even think to look at a picture of a real bee.
I think you have to go with the impressionist approach to a bee because it seems effective. So Lauren, do you think that is a starting point, or has it just muddied the waters?
Actually, it was really helpful, and thank you so much for the kind of after program conversation, because I was feeling conflicted about the direction to go, and I feel less conflicted now.
Good.
I really appreciate it. And I also really got a lot out tonight, Sue, of your comment about the video, about being rooted in trying to solve a problem using the problem's strategies. I think that was a really apt kind of way to think about that video, which I hadn't thought about before, and I think it's worth a conversation. I really appreciate it. I work closely with Newton on a weekly basis, and we have a weekly kind of studio conversation, and we argue quite a bit about scale. Because he's always arguing that my work is too small. And I'm always arguing that I'm just a different kind of thinker and I have a different way of learning and processing things. So most of most of our conversation has to do with how large something needs to be effective, to be able to solve a problem. And I say that I think that he has a hopelessly romantic idea of where we're at. Like,
Well,
I think that
where it comes from.
he's still thinking about a world where you can solve the problem, you know? So I think that that's a very old fashioned kind of concept. So I'm now really looking forward to talking to him about
his God's eye view.
I think it's really a really good thing to talk about. Like, he's utilizing a strategy in that film to communicate to power structures in a language that they are accustomed to, right?
Definitely.
And I think that I hadn't really thought about that as being, you know, obviously that is an important thing to do, and it's a wonderful film and a great piece of work, but there is a big however, right? And I think you have your finger on something there, which is that the strategy is part of the problem, that he's using the same problem.
And can I also add that the municipal managers or whoever he's trying to reach, or whoever the state government or whatever.
Brown. We're currently extending his idea. We're working on a project that he calls a unity, where we're writing letters to the governing agencies of the top 10 international cities that when the seas rise will be underwater, in order to convene a solution-based conversation about what needs to happen in the now. So I'm deeply enmeshed currently in the gleaning of these kinds of statistics. I mean, I really find it fun because Newton's a genius and I like to work with him, but it's more for me, it's more about an education on how he's thinking.
Yeah.
And you brought up something today, which I hadn't like fully thought of before, which is that it's only one way of addressing the problem. And it's actually a way which reinforces the thinking of how the problem.
Exactly. It doesn't even, you know what, and they're going to reject it anyway, because even just watching that video, I saw there were so many loopholes. I mean, there were just so many missing elements of his analysis that they would just be like, oh, somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about did this, which is really sad, because I think the intention behind it was so good, obviously. But, you know, when you say a building, the concrete in a building is emitting this many tons of carbon, but the wood that's consumed, you know, used in the building will remove this much carbon. That's inadequate to describe that. That's just inadequate as a carbon balance, because there's no operational life cycle of that building taken into account. I mean, these boring people in the government, they just speak that language all the time. They know how to do it, but to really jolt them is you need like a Greta Thunberg who starts like, you know, crying and whatever and rallying people. The other stuff, and they want that. That's what they want, I think, because all the best science in the world and all the best figures and facts are still not enough to move the human spirit.
When it causes debate, and it causes more conflict, and that has proven to be, yeah, it's not how you get everybody on the same page, I think.
At least even a critical mass of people on the same page, because those science numbers, they don't move people. And somebody on the chat was asking about acres, and they said, do you know what an acre is? And I just can't visualize an acre.
It's 5,180 square feet.
But you can't visualize it in terms of things that you know. So just that number of acres doesn't ring home to you like, oh, it's
Yeah.
your house and your neighbor's house and the whole
Yeah.
street. And
It's
know,
so
that's
funny-
what.
So funny that you mentioned that when I started the metabolic cycle of work with Not a Cornfield, and I had to bring in all of the irrigation stripping, I tried to think about how can I communicate how absurd this is. And I came out with like, if I took all the irrigation stripping that I used on that site and laid it out, how far could you drive? And it turned out that it was 90 miles of irrigation stripping on that park. So I utilized 90 miles of irrigation stripping in order to irrigate 32 acres. So that was, and how I understood 32 acres is that I put a 1 mile track around the whole thing because I couldn't understand 32 acres. Like, what does that mean? I understood it visually, but I understood that it took 20 minutes to walk fast around it and that you could drive 90 miles that would take like an hour and a half. So there was like an hour and a half.
That's called spatial intelligence. But I grew up on a farm. My grandparents had 680 acres. And so I learned, young, because I would ask that growing up. I'm like, well, how many acres is that section over there? And they're like, oh, that's 80. You know, how they cut land up in different numbers. And it takes a while. It's like learning about your computer, how your computer works. It's visual conceptualization.
But it's, again, that's very rooted in non-Indigenous, non-Indigenous measurements, right? Like
it is, yeah.
So,
it is.
I didn't learn it through measurements though. Like you said, you laid it out and that helps you. Like I never did it that way. I just looked, they'd say that's 80 acres, that's 40 acres. So I have a sense of what that looks like. Yeah.
It's a different part of the brain. And this is really captured in an analogy I can make because the Polynesian people, they never had this God's eye view that GPS gives us. And this notion of, orientations and different things like that, which is a very Western sort of overview kind of way of looking at the world. And yet they were able to, without any really landmarks or anything, navigate this massive ocean and know everywhere how to go by reading the ocean and the interaction of the weather. And they knew it from a fish in the ocean perspective, not from this oversight perspective. And those are different ways of knowing, but one isn't better than the other. It's just that we have assumed that the Western kind of way, or we have taken it as if the Western GPS satellite way of seeing things is the way. But it's remarkable the sense and understanding of space that those Polynesian navigators had. And not only that they just knew the physical, abiotic environment, but they knew the people who lived on each island along the way and their entire history. And it was all in the brain and memory. And that is something we don't have. We've lost that. Talk about losing arts. Like our brains have lost that capability.
All those nuanced ways of understanding your place in the universe.
Well, it comes from walking it, if my grandfather told me that section 60, I would where are the boundary lines? And then, so that it became like a space that represented that number. And I also, I played 5 instruments when I was a kid, but I learned them all by ear. it would take me forever to learn the song. My parents would be like, oh my God, if you play that one more time. But like, I can still play them, you know, like I don't read music. And so that's just a different way a brain works, I think. I don't know if that's genetic or.
Kinesthetic intelligence. Your
spatial. Yeah.
Or movement intelligence. Which also, by the way, the Western notion of intelligence is very reductionist. They
Yes.
don't even accept that naturalistic intelligence is an intelligence. It all has to be textual or numerical.
And even like the idea of pitch. I mean, the Chinese language being a language with pitch, and so Chinese have perfect pitch because they need it to speak the language, whereas we lost that.
So yeah, we're not utilizing parts of our brain that we probably could be using. You know, we're
So I'm loving this conversation, but I think I have to go.
time to go.
I have to go too, I'm afraid. I need to eat something now.
Bye. I'm going to sign off and eat too.
My goodness, that was so wonderful to talk with all of you tonight. Thank you so much. It really
thank you.
grounded my day and gave me lots to think about.
Me too.
And I'm gonna go, I think I'm gonna watch that movie, is it Mind Walker?
Mind Walk.
Mind Walk.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. We got all kinds of great sources tonight. Well, see you next Friday, if whoever wants to join us on Not a Christmas.
Bye.
Well, is that Christmas Day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
That's fine.
Yeah, same time, same channel.
I may have my kid with me, but we'll put him to work too.
Perfect.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you next week. Take care.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't download your screensaver because it's New York Times and they charge you, and I don't pay for them.
Oh, let me see. I'll see if I can find it. It's now embedded in here, so I'm not sure how to get it out. So if I find it separately, I can email it to you because you sign up with your email. So I have it.
You have like 3 people. I was like, is this some kind of like way that you can know who's with metabolic or like?
Well, we were using it for an upcoming performance. We're testing it out, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Zoom has a space one, but it's kind of tacky. I like that one.
Yeah, no, I love this one. It's really beautiful.
It's textural.
So I'll look for it if I can find you.
That'd be awesome.
The actual.
Yeah.
Well, have a good
Thanks,
week,
Jen.
and we'll see you next week hopefully.
I'll
Take
see you
care.
next Friday.
Okay, wonderful. Bye.
Bye-bye.